Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Hardcore Leveling Warrior Guides. And today is the video that you all have been waiting for. The skills video, the guide. It's here. And today is going to be an introduction to skills. It might be a 2 or 3 part video just because there's a lot to cover. But just a quick disclaimer before we start the video. Remember, please, it's only been 1 week into the game so far, so there are still a lot of things which needs more testing or haven't even really been fully tested and experimented with. So please take that into consideration when watching the video. And remember, as things change, I'll make an updated video regarding them. So to start off, I want us to understand what it means to have skill sets. What are skills? Where does the damage come from? How to increase the damage? And all these other factors that greatly impact your skill choices and your skill sets. So the first thing we need to understand, and it's very, very imperative to understand this point, is when people ask me about skill combos or skill sets and then say, oh, it's doing less damage than my other skills, or I don't think it's good, or it's working properly, they need to understand that one of the main things is not having high elemental damage amplification. And we also need to understand that right now, if we look at our abilities, not everyone has the max 10 abilities for elemental damage amplification. And because not everyone has the same level of stats for elemental damage amps, not everyone's skills will be doing the same amount of damage. Obviously, there's other factors I'm going to consider and go into next, but I believe this is one of the starting points to look at. For example, if you take a look at my skills here, I've got 10 in Flame, Summoned, and Physical. I've got 9 in Divine and Void. Let's just say these are 10 too. For example, my weak points are Lightning, Earth, and Ice. I only got 4, 3, and 1 in them. So if I were to spec or build into these specific abilities, into Lightning, Earth, and Ice, I will be doing considerably less damage than if I were to sort of spec into Physical or Fire or Summoned or Divine or any other ones, right? And this is also very important to understand that when you are choosing your abilities, again, we've covered this before in earlier videos, the thing that you want to focus on most, especially in early game, is XP and gold boost. And these cap out at 20. You get maximum of 200% each. The rest you get from Nightmare, again, covered in earlier videos. If you haven't seen them, go check them out. Those are the most important, without a doubt. That's what you want to increase your power, your levels, to get more abilities from it, and all the rest of it. The other things that you want to consider is obviously your basic attack, your elemental skill, your skill attack, and your flat attack amp. And then you got your boss and normal monster. Now, elemental amp. If you do not have high enough elemental amp, certain skill sets that people recommend, or I recommend, whoever recommends it, that you check out, may not work as they have suggested it to. And this is something that you need to understand and take into consideration because it's the early game. Not everyone has all 10 on everything. So their skill damage won't be as high. Now, another considerable factor is your skill damage itself. If we look up here, or actually it's better to go on the stats page for this, just because it will be more clear. If we look here, our basic attack and skill damage. Now, I'm not using Witch or Swordmaster, so I won't have increased basic attack or skill damage. So this is my raw stats. 25 million basic attack and 320 million skill damage. Now, that's just me, for example. This is not something that you have to copy. Again, there are many, many, many different ways that you can build. You could have spec'd into basic attack damage and you could be lacking in skill damage, which would be a big factor for you having less skill damage for certain skill sets. And again, that's something you need to check and consider, and also maybe even see if you're using Witch, if you have Witch. If you don't have Witch, you can always use one of the other companions that do skill damage amplification. Let's check who does. I don't actually think there's anyone that does skill damage amplification. Yeah, I think it's just Witch so far that has skill damage amp and basic damage. But you also have final damage amp, which is also plays a very, very big factor in your skills. But going back to the skill damage amp, that is something that you're going to want to also look into and maybe invest. If you have a ticket, maybe you want to invest it into Witch if you see that your skill damage is lacking. Although it's not really a bad thing to have less skill damage, it just means that you need to level up your attack or your skill damage also in training. So if you come to growth, come to training, you might just want to increase more in your skill damage than basic attack, and also your attack. And obviously, you progress faster, you progress more, and things will increase as you go ahead. Another factor, which is an obvious one that most people know about, is, again, what I just covered quickly, is your team composition. That also matters. If you're trying to build into a nuke setup, but you're using Swordmaster, for example, then you're doing things wrong. An S tier character, especially if you're building a skill nuke setup, is Witch. And I'll explain in a second what I mean by a nuke setup. But having Witch is very, very crucial for high skill damage output, because she's giving you basic, flat out 400% skill damage. Not basic, but 400% skill damage amp, which scales obviously as you level her up. And also she's got her traits, as they all do. They've got their traits, which I'll be covering in the tier list video. But you got your traits here that unlock other passives and other effects, which are all very helpful, right? So having a skill damager like Witch will resolve you having small skill damage percentage and make your skills hit harder, right? Another very, very big and major thing to consider is your trait setup. And again, there's a lot to go through, so this is going to have to be split up in more videos. So I won't have time to cover traits today, but just as something to put out there for you to think about and maybe even look into it yourself. Do a bit of reading, do a bit of understanding about what things link with what. That is what I'm trying to sort of get out of this introduction to skills, is making you guys understand about how to link things together, how to see what works with what, and how you can make the most of it. Because essentially that's all it is. A lot of it is just reading and a bit of understanding. For example, if we are to look at the bottom tree here, just quickly, you got dealing crit damage amplifies skill damage by 70% and stacks up to 3 times, right? And obviously this can be further increased if you attune it, right? The skill damage amplification. That's minimum 210% skill damage amp for dealing crit damage. So then that means that you'd want to spec into crit, your higher crit rate, because the higher crit rate you have, the more likely you're to do crit damage, and the more likely you are getting that higher skill damage amplification, right? These things all link together, and they just take a bit of reading and a bit of understanding to do. For example, if an attack lands without activating a critical hit, crit rate increases by 2%. Resets when a critical hit is activated, right? Again, I'm going to go over the best, trait setups, best optimum skill setups. Again, it varies because of your circumstances, right? But I'm going to try my best to cover as much as I can and go through all of that in separate videos. But like I said, these things require a bit of reading, right? You want to see what goes with that. If I paired this skill or this trait with this trait, that is doing wonders. If I miss a crit, cool, I'm getting extra crit rate until I hit that crit, which is guaranteeing me that 70% minimum, right? Because you want to attune this eventually. So you'll get minimum 70%, which stacks up to 3 times, right? You are increasing this. And all it does, it just takes a bit of reading, a bit of understanding. And that's what I want to sort of bring to everyone's attention, just because a lot of people, I feel like they don't read their skills and their traits enough. Fair enough, having low skill damage or low or high basic attack damage is a factor, right? That you may be doing weak skill damage. But it's very, very important. Now moving on to skills themselves and talking about them here. Again, this video is going to be a bit long. That's why I need to split it up into many videos, but bear with me. Don't use too many mana skills. This is something that I've seen so much, and so many people are using this in the Discord. They're saying, I've just got so many nukes, nuke setups. I've got so many high mana, skills, and so why can't I kill this boss? Why am I just failing at 20%, or why am I only getting in 20% damage, etc.? It's because a lot of people don't balance and optimize their skill sets, and this is very, very crucial. Within our skill sets here, and we'll take a look in a second, we have mana consuming skills and we have HP consuming skills, and this is very, very important. For example, Blood Golem, 40% HP activation cost, right? And another great example would be Curse, 50% mana activation cost. People really, really miss over these small details of just reading just this part here and seeing that it does 50% mana. You know, I've had a few people come up to me and say, you know, I'm doing this XYZ and I've just got no mana. I say, what skills are you using? Curse. And, you know, a bunch of high mana activation skills. Well, Curse is your main problem because it takes half your mana away straight away, right? And that is what is going to be the main cause of your issue. So read your skills properly, understand them a bit more, and I will go into a bit more detail in other skill set videos. I'm going to make another, obviously, like I said, 2-3 part to this video where I do share actual skill sets that you guys can try out and see. But for today, it's just an introduction for you to understand things yourself, so you can have a bit of experimentation yourself and find that joy. I mean, I guess that's why it took me a long time to get this video out, is because I was really sort of having fun just experimenting with so many different combos, so many different variations of, you know, if I use this much HP and then I use HP regen skills and then, you know, etc. etc. So I want you guys to sort of feel that for yourself, because it is quite fun. But like I was saying, reading your skills properly, okay? This is why your DPS rotations will get slow, having high mana consuming skills. And there's always different ways to build, right? You can either nuke, you can have a balanced basic attack and skill damage, or you could spec completely into basic attacks with smite and crit rate, right? And again, smite, I guess a lot of people don't know, but smite is when you see your character do the little dash, do the little energized dash. And a good way to see what this is if you come to the skill, right, the Blessing of the Wind skill, the next two attacks have 100% smite rate. So if you take this into guild training, which is another thing I'm going to mention in a minute, you can actually see the two attacks and what they actually do. So it's when he just dashes back and forth, and it does increase damage. But like I was saying, you can spec into basic attack, have crit build, smite build, and that can work wonders for you. It just depends on your playstyle, how you think you want to sort of, you know, spec into what, and what you already sort of have going for you already. For example, if you've got high basic attack, because of in your abilities you've been choosing basic attack, then you might want to sort of see what routes you can take. And this comes back to traits again. I mean, a lot of it is heavily linked to traits. Another thing to mention in skills is the order of your skills actually matter, right? Especially if you're playing on auto. If you're not playing on auto, then obviously it won't matter, but I don't think any of us are playing manually, just because it takes way too long. It's not really optimum for rotations, unless you got macros set up that can click the buttons for you at the exact time you want it. I just don't think that's efficient at all, but the order of skills matter. So for example, if I run you through my current mob clear setup, so I'm just farming first stage, got Heart Eater run for the gold gain. If I go through my skill setup, I've got mana, I've got Curse at the front, which takes 50% of my mana straight away, right? So now I've got 50% less mana. I then use Mass Chain Holy Light, which takes 400 mana, right? And this is just doing a ton of damage because of the damage boost by 50% that I get from Curse. And obviously the extra damage, whatever, right? Then I have Epidemic, where every basic attack becomes infected, and every time I get a kill, I get 10% damage amp up, which goes up to 60%. Okay, and this is a HP skill. And it gives you here what exactly it does, how it takes it, and what happens. And that I've put there as a HP skill to sort of give a break between the mana skills. Again, like I said, it's still early, so what I could be saying is completely false. But from what I've tested so far and from my sort of understanding, it sort of works. It will work for me at least. It may work differently for others. There may be better ways to go about it. Again, things will be updated in the future, etc., etc. Next, I'll put Winter Elemental, which is a key skill to have for mana builds, because you recover 200 mana and it takes 0 mana to recover that, right? You start off at 100. As you upgrade it, it gets more, and it does a nice little freeze with basic attack. But that's giving me mana, right? I then have Sword of Nightmare and Doll Masquerade, which work together. Just like the first two work together, these two work together, right? And what does this do? Let's read it. For example, Sword of Nightmare, 13% HP cost. Okay, cool. Drop Sword of Nightmare, 3 9 positions, blah, 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 blah. And restrained and damage and etc. Last 5 seconds, 8-second cooldown. Pretty quick. The thing to note here is this is a summon, right? This is a summoned entity, and you'll see it. For example, if you look when these swords come, and any second now, you see at the top, summoned entity, right? This is a summoning skill. You are summoning something. So if we look at Dull Masquerade, 40% HP cost, and it's a use count 1, so you only use it once and it'll be active. After the skill is activated, amplifies the damage by 20%, HP by 30% according to the number of entities summoned. The count accumulates to up to 1. So, because I've summoned swords, right, number of swords, my damage is increasing by however many swords I've... Well, that's one thing that I'm not really sure about yet. I still need to do testing on that, but I'm not sure if it's just for the skill itself as counting as one entity or each sword being separate entities. I believe it's each sword being separate entities because you see different summoned entities on the screen. Yeah, so it'd probably be the latter. Anyways, that goes hand in hand. I'm getting extra damage percent up for having this summoned sword coming out, right? Next, I have Final Fooler. Now, by now, I've used up a lot of... I've left a big gap for HP skills and mana regen skills. So I should have quite a bit of mana back. Where I use this big AoE or CC skill with 400 mana. 21-second cooldown. And my last skill is 8% HP. Nice, very, very beautiful skill. Does a lot of damage. And it's a good sort of CC skill, right? Crowd control skill. Good AoE skill. Whatever you want to call it. Well, I don't think it actually does CCs. Well, it decreases speed. So, yeah, and it infects. Anyways, that is that, right? So you see how I've sort of linked them together. I've sort of seen how, you know, and I've balanced it between HP and attack. And that's the most important thing that you want to understand when you want to see here and you want to sort of make use of. You can also spec into different buffing and debuffing. So, for example, Superconductor Blade. Damage dealt to electrocuted targets increases by 16.8% by 8% for 3 seconds, right? So if you pair this, and a great pairing for this would be Thunderstrike, right? Where calls down a lightning bolt on a random location to deal 108% damage, and the lightning strikes 25 times, right? So this is a long skill. So it will cover the duration of those 3 seconds, and it'll probably just have a little bit left over, right? Beautiful skill. Another good skill setup, for example, is using Blood Golem. If you don't have the blades, the Sword of Nightmare, Blood Golem is a great skill, right? And I know some top players that are still using it till now. Again, HP skill, summoning skill, so you pair it very well with Dull Masquerade. But one thing to also note is my skills, if you sort of remember what they are all based off of my high elemental damage amplification. These are all what I have 200% or 180% in. And that's why they work so well for me. They may not work well for you because you might have low void or low divine damage amp, but for me they work wonders, right? And that's something that I'm gonna make you guys understand is look at what you guys first of all have already spec'd into for your elemental damage amps. What do you already have? What skills do you have and what can you make use of within those skills, right? There are a lot of different variations. For example, another beautiful skill for physical damage is Life Drain with Rising Force and Lacerate, right? We read Lacerate's thing. Damage dealt to bleeding enemies increases by 40%. And this does a ton of damage itself, even at level 1. We look at Life Drain. Deals 300% damage, blah, 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 and makes them bleed. So you're getting bleed out of this, and then you're increasing it. Damage dealt to bleeding enemies by 40%. Then you have Rising Force, which is a great damage amplification skill. Only costs 10% of your mana, and 4-second cooldown. And it stacks up to 80%. So you're getting about 4 or 5 uses out of that. Right, 5 uses with 5% left over. And obviously, as you level this up, it's increasing. So that's just a sort of insight, a brief insight into these skills. Again, I'm going to make a longer video. I'm going to do some testing with some people from the Discord and bring out a bunch of little sort of nifty skill sets that you could utilize and use hopefully sometime soon. But just as a little insight to see these things for yourself and read them and sort of test them out. So like I said, put some skills together, make a preset, make a new preset, right? Put some skill stats, like these are some things that I was just testing out. Put some skills together, come over to the guild tab, right? Come to the guild training and just go at it, just test them out, see what works, see what's happening, just experiment, and obviously have fun, This is still an idle game at the end of the day, so still have fun. This is the end of this sort of lengthy introduction to skills and all the rest of it. Hopefully this mini guide helped. And again, this is a 2 to 3 part series, so be on the lookout for the other rest of these skills and traits guide videos, which will be coming this week. I will make sure to bring it to you guys this week. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this so far. Again, if you liked it, please like, comment, sub, share, all the rest of it. You guys know how to do it. And yeah, hopefully if you guys got any more questions or any other things that you want me to cover, comments below, Discord in the description, you know, the usual stuff. Anyways, I'm tired. I've done a lot of crunching, a lot of cooking. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and take care. See you guys for the next one.